Last week we talked about a very heavy subject, the subject of hell. And this week I'd like to maybe lighten things up a little because hell is a heavy subject. So today I'd like to talk to you about your death. Uh, it's coming. You are going to die. There's no doubt about that. One person dies every 12 seconds in the USA. In the world, one person dies every half second, and your half second will be coming. Um, it doesn't matter who you are, you're going, you're leaving this world. And you don't know when that's going to happen. I got a call from a friend of mine, and it was on Thursday evening, and he called me and shared with me that his daughter had been in a car accident, um, and was with a motorcyclist, and the motorcyclist was killed, a young man, I think 18 or 19 years old, and they were at the police station at the time. And they were interviewing his daughter in regards to the accident, being a very serious one, of course. And uh, then I got a message from him this morning as I was preparing this lesson to tell me that one of his co-workers was found dead at work, and they don't know what happened with the man. But again, there's death all around us all the time. And the death of someone I don't know on a motorcycle, or someone who dies that I don't know, a colleague, a friend of mine dying at work, affects me, and it affects us. It affects us in ways. When we hear these events, we hear these deaths happening. I think it affects us uh, because it points to our own death. It points to the fact that we're only here for a limited amount of time, and that's not an opinion. That's a fact. A fact. But someone says, "Well, isn't death a long way away, Ian?" Um, this is what I call the "I'm never going to die" delusion. These are the people that tell you that, and they all do have, great uncles who had, lived the 110 in Ireland. They'll talk about how their uncle or whoever it was, this relative, drank and smoked and ate what he wanted, and he lived to 110. And the logic behind this is, well, I will live to then as well. Have you ever heard of anything more foolish? Because one person, an anomaly, if they ever existed, that is, which they probably didn't. Uh, this anomaly is going to then somehow credit me with longevity. It's delusional. It's These people are delusional. They're giving themselves large deposits in the time bank. The idea that they're going to be here for a long time. These are the same people who are going to spend their money on having their heads frozen. Cryogenics is going to be the solution, because even when they do die, when they admit they're going to die, well, they're going to be revived again by these scientists. Listen, the facts are, even if you lived for 1,000 years, that's nothing in light of eternity, and you're still going to die one way or the other. So it's important that you just face the facts, and let's get rid of the delusion. So then I meet people, and these are interesting people. They come along and they tell me I don't think about death. I just live for the moment. Oh, they're the liars. They are liars. The idea that they don't go to bed at night realizing that their life is quickly coming to a conclusion, liars. And then you have the other ones. These are the I'm not afraid of death. These are the macho types. These are the ones who, oh yeah, I'm ready to go. I'll face it. These are the people who are the first when they feel ill to get down to the doctor to find a cure. Liars. All of them are liars. They're all afraid of death. Everyone is afraid of death, no matter what they say. They're just liars. And you know how you can tell this? Bring death up at a party. Bring it up when everybody's cracking open the bottles or smoking the weed or snorting the coke or whatever else they do. Bring it up and start a conversation about death. Say, what do you guys think about death? How long do you think you've got here on the planet? How many years do you have left? How do you know it's not going to come soon? And you will see the fear. You will see how they will usher you out of that party because they can't even talk about it. So this idea that they don't fear it is a nonsense. It's an absolute nonsense. And when I meet folks, I like to ask them questions about death. If they're brave enough to even look at the topic, I like to ask questions. I like to ask this one, what do you think happens when you die? And I've heard different answers to that. What do you think happens when you die? Some people talk about a ghosty, spiritual existence where you're floating around. You know, I know there's something, they'll say. They won't tell you how they know, but they'll say that there's something else out there. And then you meet the people, and these guys are interested, and they say, oh, you just returned to dirt, and it's all black. You don't exist anymore. Listen, you can't even imagine not existing. They're putting something in. They're putting something on the table that none of us can imagine. Even a kind of blackness, you're still existing. It's just all black. And then we have the folks that come along and says, well, nobody knows. Nobody, and this is the line, I've heard it over the years, nobody's come back to tell us. Well, what about Jesus Christ? What about Jesus of Nazareth? I asked them. And they'll say, oh, that's all myth. That's all made up by the disciples. That's all made up by religious men to control you. This whole thing about Jesus overcoming death and coming back from the dead. And then the question I ask is this. What has led you to believe that? What logical steps have you taken to come to that conclusion? What evidence do you have that this is all a lie? And you know their answer? They don't have an answer because they've never thought it out. They're parroting what their grandfather or their dad or their buddies at school told them, or their college professor or someone they watched on YouTube. And then I put this to them. Have you ever considered that the disciples of Jesus Christ told the truth when it came to him rising from the dead and beating death? And the answer I get, there is no answer. It's crickets, silence. It hasn't even crossed their mind, or they have not given that option a serious consideration. But one thing they do learn, and we do learn from death, is this: we are weaker than we ever imagined. I sat at a memorable conversation. It's interesting how they come. I sat in a car with a friend of mine in Webster, Massachusetts. My good friend Bill Gaudette. We sat there. We were talking into the early hours. We'd had a meal, and we were talking about life. And Bill's a man of few words. But when he speaks, you should listen. And on this night, Bill looked around in the parking lot and all the buildings, and he looked around to me and he said, Ian, it's all dust. It's all dust. The cars, the houses, the clothing, the toys that we buy, the grown-up toys, the motorcycles, the jet skis, the condominiums, the motorboats, whatever it might be, it's all dust. And so are we. And how never truer words were spoken. Genesis 3:19, for dust you are, and to dust you will return. Everything is turning to dust, including us. It's all passing away. Just give it long enough. So, and remember, as you sit here today, as I sit here today, we're crumbling. The lines and the wrinkles are the crumbling. The sagging and the aches and the pains in the bones and the joints, we're crumbling. We're turning to dust as we speak. Now, how do we cope with death? Where do we go in the face of it? In light of the death of loved ones, in light of the death of friends, in light of our own mortality, our own dying, our own crumbling. Well, the last place we go to for help is dust. Dust does not go to dust for help. We do not go to men, because men are dying too. How can any man help you or I? Because they are going to the grave, so they can't help us with death. And it doesn't matter how intelligent they are. It doesn't matter how religious they are. It doesn't matter how wise they are or good they are. They're all going to. So the last place we go to for our help is man. Any kind of man. None of them can help us. The only one that can help us is written about in Psalm 46, 1-3. Listen to this. God is our refuge and our strength, and ever-present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth gives way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam and the mountains quake with their surging. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. He's saying here, if it all turns to dust, God doesn't. Because God is eternal. And God is our refuge from death. And God is our strength in the midst of the fear of death. And God is our help in the greatest trouble we will face, which is death itself. God, the only help for us. So the offer's on the table for you. If you're not a Christian, you need to stop living in denial. You need to stop being delusional about death. You need to stop being confused about death. Your half second is coming. And you're not long for this world. You're like the flower of the field. You're here one day, you'll be gone tomorrow. So stop trusting in dust. Stop trusting in man to help you. Stop trusting in yourself and trust in the eternal and living God, and Jesus, who revealed himself fully, became a man in Jesus of Nazareth. Trust in him. Put your faith in him. There is no other option to beat death except for Jesus. Jesus Christ. Christians have two ordinances. Some people might call them rituals. Two things that we do. The first one you do once. You're baptized. You're dunked in water. You're immersed. That's what it means. You're brought up out of the water. And then on the first day of the week, they come together and they take a little bit of bread, a little bit of fruit of the vine, a little bit of grape juice, And these are the two ordinances that Jesus gave for us to do. The first one you do once, the other you do on the first day of the week until Jesus comes. Now, why did he give us these things? Well, it's important to keep in mind that the baptism and the Lord's Supper or the Eucharist or the Lord's table, however you want to describe it, he gave it to us because they all revolve around one historical event. The Christ died, the Christ was buried, and the Christ rose from the dead. Baptism is death, burial, resurrection. The bread symbolizes his body, the blood or the cup symbolizes his blood, which was crucified, and he took up again when he rose from the dead on the third day. All of it says that death has been defeated. That's what baptism and the Lord's Supper brings us back to. The historical fact that Jesus overcame the grave. So be baptized into Christ. Stop trusting in yourself and trust in him who can beat death for you and has beat death for us. Be baptized. Put your trust and faith in him and go into the waters of baptism and find forgiveness and grace and immortality. Beat death. That's what this is about. To conquer the grave. Goodness sake, stop thinking steeples and church buildings and songs and hymns and rituals. That's not what Christianity's about. We're in the death-beating business. That's what Jesus came to do and did and has done and will do for you if you put your faith in him. Goodness sake, we're sitting around thinking incense and robes and boring hymns when death has been conquered. Your greatest issue and mine have been beaten by him. And that's why we come together on the Lord's Day. Come together to celebrate. Yes, we're suffering. Yes, we're in pain. Yes, life is hard. But death has been defeated by Christ. Jesus has conquered the grave. And we have, in him, also beaten death. And there's a day coming where that's going to be realized. In John 11, Jesus said this, I am the resurrection and the life. And he went to the grave of Lazarus, who was dead for days, and he was stinking of death. And he said to Lazarus, come out. And Lazarus came out of that grave. I had to take the grave clothes off him. He was so dead. There's a day coming when Jesus is going to raise all men from the dead. Jesus delivers on his promises. Jesus does what he says he'll do. Because we know that. We know that he defeats all kinds of death. And it doesn't matter what kind of death it might be. We're talking about physical death today, but there's other forms of death. There's illness and divorce and disappointments and sickness, abandonment and depression, or whatever it might be. It does not defeat Jesus, because he's the King of life, and he can inject life into the loneliest of hearts, into the most isolated person on this earth, the most abandoned or forsaken, the most depressed, the most hopeless. Jesus beats that kind of death, and he can inject that into you if you will put your trust and faith in him and go into the waters of baptism, believing on him, not in the power of water, but in the power there is in Christ, and you can be brought back to life internally and given immortality and beat the physical death through Jesus if you will but trust in him. Someone says, how do you know that's true, Ian? Listen, bring your atheists. Bring your Richard Dawkins, your Daniel Dennett's, bring them all, line them up, and bring with them those whose lives have been transformed by their lie, by their deception, by their nonsense about a pointless life. You bring them and line them up. I could bring you states full of people, millions of people, tens of billions whose lives have been transformed and changed and resurrected by Jesus Christ. Atheism's done nothing for nobody, ever, except for lead them to suicide. Yes, to take their own life. That's all it does. Empty nonsense and demonic lies, and the fruit of it is suicide. Listen, there's no other hope but Christ. There's no other way but Jesus. You're leaving this world. We all are. The sands of time are ticking out. Listen, if you're 50-year-old like me, it's over. It's over. Your life's over. You're done. We're in the last quarter of the game. This is the last few minutes. We're just playing this thing out. It's done. Now, the cure to death is being discovered. 2,000 years ago, Jesus of Nazareth went into that grave. They crucified him, did all kinds of wickedness to him. They buried him, but on the third day, they went to that tomb, and it's empty. Because he did what he said he was going to do. Destroy this temple, and I'll raise it again in 3 days. And he can do exactly the same for you and for me and for us. Do you want to beat death? There's only one option. Muhammad, he's in his grave. Buddha, he's in his grave. Richard Dawkins, he's going to be in his grave shortly. Line them up. Karl Marx, Jung, Freud, all of them in their graves. Your mommies and daddies, if they're not in their graves now, they're going shortly. They can't help you. Nobody can help you. You're going into a hole in the ground. The only one that can help you to beat death is Jesus of Nazareth. That's what he wants to do. He's not trying to get you to go to church. He's not trying to get your money. He's not trying to get you to do good works. None of that's going to save you from the grave. None of that's going to defeat death. The only one who can do it and has done it is Jesus of Nazareth. Put your trust in him. Death coming sooner than you think. Put your trust in Jesus. Be baptized into union with him. Rise to walk in newness of life. And on the first day of the week, come together with your brothers and sisters, and we're going to celebrate. Even though we're suffering, even though we're going through pain, even though we're going through hardships, the greatest enemy we've ever faced has been defeated, and immortality in life has been given to us in Jesus. That's why we do what we do until he comes.